Mickey, visiting the Punk Rock and Beyond show.
Absolutely, man.
Urban
I'm
camping.
looking forward to it.
Urban camping.
That's a pretty good whiskey there, Spike. Good times, man.
Punk rock
Good
and
interviews.
Beyond with your host DJ Spike Polite. Today we got an in-house interview with our urban camping legend, Mickey, aka McManus. All right, so welcome to the show, Mickey.
Check 1, 2, 3. Okay. So it's good to be here, man. I've been looking forward to doing your show, for a while, and so when I came to the city, I shouted you out, man. And, I made it my business to come over here and hook up with you so we can do this for sure.
So can you tell the listeners what you do? And did I say it properly? It's urban. What do you call it?
I would just rephrase it, it's like urban survival, because that's really what it comes down to, survival is viable, but depending on your environment,
Urban
your
survival.
skill, urban survival, you're going to need different skills than you would need necessarily in a backwoods or rural setting. Both of them are survival, for sure.
All right, that sounds logical. A lot of people are worried. It seems they're concerned about troubles happening. How long ago did you get the concept of doing this?
Well, what happened, Spike, that's an interesting story, right? So, I had heard about this, like the squatter scene traveling around, and then I got to the city, and then when I first got to the city, Thompson Square Park had a big old fence put around it because that little quasi right that they had there, they shut it down. So when I first got here, that was closed. So I stayed around Washington Square Park. Then I started venturing into the Lower East Side. I met you and Cronus, right? And you guys had like this quasi squat up in the North Bronx, right?
Wow.
You remember that?
MVP.
Yeah, for sure. That was a wild squat, man. Ghost infested in the hood. But man, I went up there for years off and on, man. I can tell you stories about that squat for sure.
Well, yeah, that squat was definitely out of necessity, as most people would have to squat and live in abandoned buildings, lack of a financial income or housing. And for us as runaway teens, we were there working to have a place to stay so we can make life happen. Wow, what made you get back into the squatting thing?
Well, you know what, so you guys said, hey man, we got a squat up in the North Bronx, but like this is the situation. Anyway, I made my way up there, and after that, it became like my little quasi squat. I always went back up there for years on end, actually. I would say probably 15, 20 years off and on, I don't know, probably the building's gone now, but it was 226th Street, right?
20, yeah, and it was Burns.
Burns Avenue,
Yeah.
Between White Plains and Burns, I think it was 226.
Right on the church line.
Yep. Man. A couple of times we had to go through there, we were all punked out and shit. So I had and the black folks, right? They were in that parking lot waiting to go to the church across the street, and they were out there, and we needed to go in. This happened a couple of times too. We'd be in there, right? And we just walked through and was like, hey, what's up, guys? And boom, we went to the fence, jumped it, went in the building. They never brought no cops, never gave us a problem. We respected them as well, but it's like they were actually pretty cool about it. So,
Most of them are immigrants who are Dominicans or Jamaicans, so they know about having to do the lowest of the low to survive. And so, they ain't gonna say nothing until someone like Cronus would pee out the window on them, then that's
that would be a
that's
problem.
wrong. Yeah.
For not for nothing, my experiences personally up there, I never had not really one negative experience up there all the time. Only
Left alone and in peace.
yeah, it was pretty cool, man. And now that building was haunted, man. If you took a radio up there with batteries in it, it's
Microphone closer to your mouth.
okay, dokie.
Yeah, not so it get haunted.
So that building was extremely haunted. If you took a radio in there, because back in the day everybody didn't have a phone and whatnot, so you could get a little mini radio, AM, FM joint. You take a radio up there to that spot, and as soon as you turned it off, if you turned it off for any reason, the batteries were dead when you drained when you went back for it. There's some kind of energy, something up there, and it was kind of a rugged spot, but I was grateful to have it many nights and many days when it was raining, and and that's kind of it's just like I think we equate survival as like the backwoods. That's definitely a part of but there's also such a thing as like real life, and you have a lot of huge urban areas, and there's a lot of like urban survival tactics and skills that can come into play to make your situation a lot better if you were to find yourself in that kind of a challenging situation, for sure.
I'm glad you visited the squat and stayed up there. I was unaware that you had been back and forth there so many times. I guess I did it like that too. I would be there on the time of need and don't tell many people about it, so I won't have to fight somebody going into my building because they think I'm going to attack them, because they've been staying there lately and it's going to be quiet and just get
I only
in.
put a few people onto it myself. Good dude, like Danny and Satan Danny, and cool dudes and shit like that, But if you find yourself, but these are number one, they were actually abandoned buildings. So we're not talking about going into a dwelling that really is occupied by
Or
someone,
owned by somebody
nothing
else.
like
These were
that.
neglected by the owners, and the city was seeking foreclosure on them, and they were going to demolish and expand the parking lot of the church.
They were truly abandoned buildings, and people need a place to stay, especially in brutal winter months, so it became a necessity, and that's
So it's cool that you held on to the stuff. Some other people went through the system in one way voluntarily or another. I'll wait a little bit. And they, eventually some people got on housing lottery lists, and other people maybe went insane. Other people maybe thought their life was worthless and got high on drugs and died or whatever. But returning to that place, the barns in 224th Street, or 226,
I think being in New York City, because before I got to the city, right, approximately 30 years ago, you and I have known each other for sure since the early 90s. I say between maybe late 98, early 91, something like that. I met you in Cronus down around Tompkins Square. And by that point I had, pretty much dedicated myself to like, okay, I'm gonna figure out how the city works and shit, So you guys kind of put me on to my first official, like, okay, this is a squat. Like some, renegades tucked that were living in the streets and did something to make it somewhat human habitable, And being a country boy, really, I'm really from Carolina, and I travel around pretty extensively: San Francisco, LA, Myrtle Beach, Florida, a lot of different places before I landed in the city a long time ago. I guess I really am a nomad, in that sense. And sometimes you got to get, down to the bare nitty gritty of survival, and urban survival is a unique challenge, and it is a survival challenge if you're unhoused and you carry your, your bedroll, your blanket on your back. It can be a challenge, but there is ways to do it and be successful at it. But even under the best situations, it's going to be a challenge, and so SHU Outdoors is an oxymoron of a word, because SHU stands for Special Housing Unit, prison, and, like the hole, the beam, box, whatever, however you refer to it. But outdoors doesn't really go with Special Housing Unit, so it's like an oxymoron of a word. And, that's kind of the whole point of the channel. SHU Outdoors, it's like about, doing things that other people take for granted, but I know people who's locked down, they don't take it for granted, being able to stealth camp and do some totally free-man shit, unsupervised, and have a good time doing it, and shout the homies out and film it and put it up. And, along the way, share cool tips and tricks, and, I think there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet and YouTube land that tries to paint Manhattan as this really super dangerous place. And
Escape from New York era stuff.
yes, from my personal experience, man, for being here for 30 years off and on as my base of operations, I would have to say that New York City is probably safer now than it has been in the last 30 or 40 years. What do you think, Spike?
I can see people walking in sandals. Obviously, they don't have to get into a boxing street fight altercation if they're wearing sandals. I see them wearing all these, things that they're not concerned about. There's no regard for safety. They feel comfortable like it's their.
It's like their backyard, basically. Yeah. Which kind of it is,
It used to be you had to have your shoes laced up pretty good, your boots, and get ready to scuffle when the next individual was seeking to disenfranchise you.
Especially in the circles we ran in.
Or just the overall vibe of the place.
You remember 14th Street, man, back in the day was a kind of run down street. You had that Woolworths over there. It wasn't really lit up like it is now. It was more a little bit. It was still there. It was still 14th Street, but it was a little bit more industrial. It was
meat packing district.
almost something like that. And then they built that new train station at 14th Street, which has been there for a very long time now. Then that neighborhood changed a little bit more upscale, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, one thing unique about the city opposed to some other places, probably a lot of other places in the country. If you're just camping out in a park, for the most part, nobody's really going to give you, a hard, a second glance unless you're doing something. I think I stated this on one of my other videos, but unless you're doing something that's rude or crude or really inappropriate, nobody's really going to give you a hard time, because a lot of people in the city, the park is their backyard, so the smaller parks, a lot of the smaller parks like Tompkins Square, Washington Square, certain other quote unquote neighborhood parks, 1 to 3 or 4 blocks of park, a lot of times they will close at 12 o'clock or something like that, or 1 o'clock or whatever. But the bigger parks like East River Park, Central Park, those parks more or less stay open all night, and you could definitely get in a little cut somewhere and stealth camping any of those parks, And if you was planning to be here through the winter time, you would scout your building something so you could burrow into come wintertime if you was planning to be here for the wintertime and use on the streets. So you use your time. And the good thing about being in a big city, when you're on the edge and you're living like life on the edge, is like you have more resources. It's like in a bigger city, you're gonna have more resources available to you as a person who is living on the margins. You know what I'm saying? Like in a small town, you're not gonna have nearly as many resources. So that'd be one of my biggest pro tips right there. Go to the biggest city around where you are. That'd probably be your best bet.
I was thinking of something after a nuclear blast or meltdown or an assassination or something. What was the next step you were going to take after it seemed like civilization was just not going to return? Did you have a longer term plan when it got to the cannibalism zombie state that it may eventually reach?
Well, one of the reasons why I relocated to Central Florida, that all happened really around the whole COVID thing, and then really, we were already like kind of tripping about being expensive in the Northeast. My wife is from Connecticut, and so, the expense and then the cold, because she didn't like the cold, so we had those two things. It was an issue. And then the COVID thing hit, and then we took a road trip, Spike, and we ended up in Daytona Beach, Florida, and everybody was walking around shooting fireworks off on, Main Street, man, and we were like, what, man, let's get, fireworks on Main Street at the fucking Hard Rock Casino, man. They sell you fireworks down there, man. It was like, wow. Okay, so we went from lockdown up here, cold, lockdown, expensive up here, to it was rock and roll and everything was super cool down there. So what happened was, it was like, you know what, man, let's go back up north, go and hunt down like some really modestly priced travel trailers and break south, man, okay? And that's what we did, so that works for me because, like I said, I really am a country boy, and I've traveled pretty extensively, and I met
I'm a country boy with John Denver. You like John Denver?
Yeah, because I can't deny that. So I was in federal prison, right? That kind of worked in my benefit, man, because I could go and holler at the New York homies and shit, because like I've been in the city so long and shit. And that I could hang out with them to a degree, and then I could go over and talk to the white hillbillies and shit from South Carolina and hang out. So it's like a cool bridge, it helped me accomplish certain things I need to accomplish, because I could hang out with both of these groups and be like authentic, so it worked out.
Now on this trip you're doing, are there any certain specific goals you're trying to get captured? Is there a situation you're looking for to show everybody?
Well, that's a great
as the change is happening here.
That's a great question, Spike, and I'm glad you asked it. So what's going on here right now is that we are doing a 7-day stealth camping, cowboy camping challenge here in New York City. Obviously, it's the biggest city in the United States population-wise. I mean, it's thousands of square blocks of hardcore urban area. So I'm doing my challenge here. So it's more than just what I'm doing. So it's like I'm formally issuing a challenge to every outdoorsman to engage in a hardcore urban challenge. There's only a handful of conditions. I don't like to say rules, conditions you've got to meet to qualify for the challenge. It's got to be in a city of more than 1 million people in its downtown core area. And you have to do the challenge in the metro core area, i.e. like a city that is in a county, but the city has all the population. You can't go out into the county and camp out and come back to the city. You have to stay in the city the whole time. So and you can't sleep indoors the whole time. So it's a hardcore stealth camping challenge. Last night we camped out in Lower East River Park. I put that cowboy camping NYC on SHU Outdoors. So that's up. It's about a 15-minute video. It's cool footage, and that's what we're going to do. You know, we're going to keep doing that kind of content. We'll do a 7-day, maybe an 8th bonus day. But yeah, that's what we're doing.
Aside from Jeff and Carr, were there any other people you were inspiring to join the urban camping experience?
Well, you know, you got a lot of people out there in the world, right? Okay, they're good people. They're trying to do the right thing, right? But life's giving them a hard time. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're on the streets and that's your reality, you can still maintain your humanity and your self-worth and stealth camp, cowboy camp, do what you gotta do to get through the day. You got technology, you got solar panels, you got a lot of things now that you wouldn't have had 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, which facilitates a much lighter load, and you know, it enables you to take a game to the next level, especially if you're producing content like we are here and over on SHU Outdoors. Yeah, that's what it's about.
Jack, you've been continuing our practices and it's working. I just hope the right people that will save the human race after the apocalypse, you know, that they get the experience, whether you and I survive or not. Maybe they'll watch this and wait, what did it make you do? Like, you know, like in the Terminator. Yeah, or in any Cold War thing we lived through. They'll just see the right thing to do. Are there any in particular experiences that you went through that you think the person that wants to or has to experience this through the apocalypse that they should be aware of? Was it scavengers? Was it
well, your sense of what is right and wrong changes as your circumstances change. So something you may say, well, I wouldn't. Something you may say, no, I'm not sure if I do that right now. Maybe if your total circumstances change, here's another circumstance, maybe you say, well, maybe I would do that. So a lot of our morality is dictated by our circumstances, what we're allowed to, make informed choices about. Yeah.
All right, Mickey. So when you're out there, some people have a tune in their head or something that inspires them to keep it going when life seems dismal and they would give up. What keeps you going in those moments?
Sheer audacity. Yeah, sheer audacity.
Is there a memory you have, a loved one, or something you keep in the back of your mind that just keeps you motivated, like a battery?
Well, that's a good question too, man. Another good question. I think what keeps you motivated, man, is just like at some point I know I'm not going to be here anymore and I'm not going to be able to do this. So this is a good time to do it right now. Film this content, put it out there. And also, I just want to give a color image to a lot of these streamers, like this Cash Jordan guy who's always putting these stream videos out about the cities going wild or whatever, and this other conservative fellow, and I don't know if he's putting content out lately, but a lot of these guys try to cash in on that. And the truth is, I would say the city is safer than it's been in the last 30 or 40 years. What do you think, Spike? Okay. Over.
I'd say that after all the gentrification we've endured to soften everything for the wealthier New Yorker or a person seeking to move to New York, they have made all of our childhood and whole life experience, the struggles we went through, they don't have to do, feel, see, think of. Maybe in a movie they might understand, but not really. It's totally safe. It's too safe. People walking around with sandals. Now we're not the Middle East where they have sandals because it's too hot. It's just sandals because they're too comfortable. They didn't have to live. The dollar paved the way. When there was something to deal with, they paid somebody with that dollar, and yeah.
As far as the homies
So
locked
totally
down in
safe.
cold, dark, lonely places,
All
you're
the
down, but
homies
you're
locked
not
down
for
in SHU, unable to.
You're down, but you're not forgotten.
Down but not forgotten. Brother Mickey
That's the bottom line.
takes a
Big
puff
Big
of
Dog
the
said
woolly,
so. You're down, but you're not forgotten.
takes a puff of the woolly in celebration of homies. Forgotten by mainstream, but not by the hardened veterans. Right? So you're gonna endure this 10-day stay out in the urban jungle. One goal you're gonna get out of this, I would say if it was me, can I go to sleep restfully, trusting my environment is fine and I'm comfortable, like a cat stretched out in the sun. Is that your final? I mean, anybody does.
Well, it depends. It depends on where you're at, what kind of park you're at. Some parks, as you know, in the city, they close down at like 12, 1 o'clock or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like neighborhood parks. It's really hard to close Central Park down or Prospect Park or East River Park because that's a lot of people's backyard. They'll go down there all night, just do things they're doing. I was camped out last time I came to the city. I was camped out a whole lot on the East River Park, right there, like 9th Street. You can walk over that footbridge.
Before the construction. Yep.
Yeah, and the construction was still, going on, but I just went right in there and I was chilling in there, man. I didn't have any problems. And then there was a little cut with a roof over it that goes on the project side where that little project is. And so when it rained one night, I just got up in there and it was all good, you know what I'm saying? So I have that footage still. I intend to do a much more put together product this time. I'm anticipating a 7-day challenge because I can only get around away from home for a certain amount of time. Yeah, so, and I'm gonna go back down there and continue the channel. SHU Outdoors, we're gonna give away the stealth camping down there, beach camping, car camping, truck camping, etc. Kayaking and so on.
I'm feeling more that all of your instructional videos that you're going to release would more so help the people like you and I. And they should be the ones to survive. And while the wealthy have already had a bunch of breaks, they may be the first to know about a lot of the stuff you're doing. Maybe you get a sponsor out of them, and they will.
Well, man, it's just like people that are on the fringe, okay? Just because you're on the fringe doesn't mean you have to give up. No matter where you're at, it's like, okay, this is where I'm at, it's like, I'm not gonna let this situation destroy me or my future, okay? I'll figure out a way to go around this, work this out somehow, right? And that's what, survival is. So if I was on the street and I was in a, situation where I was down and out, I would get the gear I needed and take whatever money I could get together and get to the biggest city I could get to because you're going to be more resources there, and once you're there, you can take advantage of those resources, soup kitchens, a number of different resources, jackets in the winter, etc.
All right. And I love the Laura Croft stuff, you know, Resident Evil, but in my mind, all the camping is just the preparation for Resident Evil times. And I'm glad you have your base in Florida. If something went wrong from there, where do you think there'd be less cannibalistic people turning into zombies
Well,
in your research?
Well, I tell you what, Florida, it's like if you're on the coast where most of the tourist spots are, you're gonna have a nice wind blowing. It's gonna be nice. You get off into the middle of Florida, you know, you're gonna need an AC. That's like a must. You know what I mean?
There's no AC for wildlife. I never saw a cat wild or a turtle put on the air conditioning or the Netflix.
True story. But I tell you what, if you live there, I got two ACs.
You're gonna have
One for the back, one for the front. And I got a generator, and I got fuel, and I got tools. So, whatever the apocalypse hits, I ain't tripping, homeboy. I'm prepped up, ready to roll.
I'm glad. I'm gonna watch these documentary series you're putting out also, and we'll be putting them forward. Mickey, any shout outs you could give to anybody that inspired you to, you know, you could think of?
Well, I tell you what, I've had a lot of people who have inspired me in different ways and different levels, like painters, punk rock bands, outlaw country bands, like stealth campers, you know, so I have a lot of inspiration, so.
Is there a favorite artist you've listened to in your days of camping out?
Well, you know what? I'm sure there is.
Cast Iron.
So I started tagging right for a long time. This Killed by Death. In fact, I got a hat in my pack. It's got a Killed by Death sticker up here, right? And that was
Like Motorhead.
Yeah, that's a tribute to Motorhead. You know what I'm saying? I was tagging that for a long time, right? And so I got that, and then I got a cat that's named Lemmy. His original name was Lemmy Motorhead.
Cool.
Lemmy Motorhead. Then I changed his name to Lemmy Motorbutt Baby for obvious reasons. He's a cool ass Bombay black cat, man. Super cool, man. Yeah, he's at home. He's chilling. Yeah, so I came over 1,000 miles from Central Florida here to New York to do the stealth camp. And I think it's much more challenging than, a lot of what people think of as survivalists would anticipate that it would be, you know what I mean? It's gonna be a lot of hiking, a lot of concrete. You're gonna have to, kind of have an idea of where to go. But it would be relatively the same in any city. I'm looking for a park that's too big to be officially closed down, and that's gonna give me I got a jump start here.
How about the Bronx? Also is a one with the cemetery. Once we smoked dust with your predecessor Cronus, as you mentioned, and we wandered up there before the train, and we wandered all night until the PCP from Crazy Eddie faded away. And woke up there and said, "Oh shit, we gotta get back to Manhattan."
Yeah, man, we had some wild ass times back in the day, man. Here's the thing. If I could go back in time, I would probably change 1,000 different things if I was right there where that change could be made. But on the flip side of the coin, things are the way they were meant to be. Things happen. Paths lead us where we end up, I'm thankful I'm in a pretty decent place, like at least I got an opportunity, these skills that I intend to pass on to SHU Outdoors, the jewels that I've dropped is really to give something back to people who are in need, a good thought process to have, the gear you need to live this lifestyle. And if, you know, in the summer months you scout a building, try to find something, so as the winter starts closing in, the skills necessary, like burning rubbing alcohol in one of like big vegetable cans at the school and shit. Get one of them, fill up with sand and rock, put it on like bricks in the floor, put the rubbing alcohol in it, it'll burn clean, man. It'll warm the room up. You can take blankets and tack those like doors off and tack the windows off. It'll help out quite a bit. But there's all kind of little tips and tricks, you know, you can use, you know, if you find yourself in that situation. That's really what the channel's all about.
I'm grateful for the advice you can give everybody when you, and hopefully people just do this to understand life and survival without the actual necessity of, you know, being there from the end of the world or something we watched from the Cold War. But yes, Mickey, you can find him all the time on that YouTube station.
SHU Outdoors, all one word. SHU Outdoors, YouTube.
All right, Mickey, it's been a blessing. Insightful. Thank you. Being on the punk rock and beyond.
Yay!